Seeing her meowing cat across the shutter, Jane felt her heart start to race. The woman reluctantly opened the door and watched the cat bound into the apartment. He wasn't empty-pawed, however. The artifact he brought her was all too familiar to her. This was something she didn't want to deal with anymore. The fact that half of the neighborhood's shoes were in her home seemed incriminating. It seemed that her cat had developed a strange habit, and she couldn't figure out why he was doing this. Picking up the shoe, she hurriedly placed it where no one else would find it. All the other items were kept in a shamefully cluttered cupboard. In front of her was a bizarre collection of mismatched shoes, so she tucked this one away with them. Is there any significance to all of this? All she wanted was to understand what her cat was doing. Taking him to the vet had not even occurred to her because his behavior had changed so abruptly. She jumped as another meow interrupted her thoughts. Suddenly, he appeared from behind and waltzed into the cupboard. What was the reason for his obsession with shoes? When Jane realized the predicament her cat had left her in, she decided to pick up the phone and do something about it. Why did he have so many shoes? Where had he gotten them? However, the woman was not aware of what she was doing. As she was about to confess what he had done, she did not know what consequences would follow. Eventually, she got through to a qualified veterinarian and explained everything. However, the strangest part was yet to come. Seeing the newest shoe offered as a tribute, one of the high heels had something sticking out of it. It was inevitable that she would have to call 911. Jane quickly checked the other shoes. Despite her best efforts, her hunch now seemed all too clear. In no time at all, the police would be knocking at her door. After her cat abruptly changed his behavior, she'd never imagined her life would change so drastically. It would change everything. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our upcoming stories. It was a happy and normal life for Jane Mendez in New Mexico. Her hard work growing up was now paying off. The mother looked after her 6-year-old son Timothy in a cozy neighborhood. Their lives were missing something, like a puzzle piece. He was never going to see his dad again. They divorced before he was even born. In her house, Timothy would stare out the window for hours, but she wondered what he was thinking about or even looking at. The neighbor's pets played in the backyard while he watched them. A companion would be helpful to him. In the following months, she conducted research on adopting pets. Her son needed a perfect match. While a dog wouldn't be right for him, another animal would be perfect. After deciding on her plan, she visited a shelter nearby. A beautiful animal caught her eye when she arrived there. As soon as Jane saw the feline staring at her from the cage, she knew she had to adopt him. He was a beautiful tabby with green eyes. All he wanted was a second chance, and she was happy to give him one. Her son would be happy. After bringing him home, Timothy was over the moon with his new pet. He named the tabby Gary after his favorite cartoon pet. One evening, after getting home from work, Jane tripped over something in the dimly lit hallway. She thought it was one of her son's toys, but she was shocked when she noticed that it was something else, a shoe. She recognized it as one of her own shoes from her wardrobe. Jane thought that her son had moved it and was too embarrassed to admit it. She moved on from it quickly and forgot about the incident. But after another week, things escalated. She found another shoe, but this time, it wasn't hers. She turned around to see Gary staring at her with his big green eyes, holding another shoe. Jane didn't understand what was going on. Was her cat behind bringing in all of the shoes? She knew that there would only be one way to get to the bottom of it. She went out to the store the next day and picked up the essential things for her plan. Jane had gone to the store to get some cameras for her home. She had been meaning to for a while, and this was a good enough excuse to finally get it done. She brought them home and installed them. One of them watched her porch, where Gary would come in from exploring during the day. If he was bringing in the shoes, then she would certainly catch him in the act. All Jane had to do was be patient and wait. Soon, she would know what was going on in her household. While at work that day, all she could think about was finally getting to the bottom of everything. After waking up the next day, Jane excitedly jumped on her laptop and went onto her security camera app. She reviewed hours of footage, but that's when she saw something she couldn't believe. She saw her tabby coming to the house in the dead of night. But she wasn't empty-handed. She was carrying a shoe in her mouth. Jane couldn't believe it was her. The cat was caught red-handed. She decided that she would try to find out what her cat's new habit was all about before it was too late. But Jane had no idea what kind of rabbit hole she was going down. She should have never adopted the cat because of the consequences. Over the next few days, the shoes piled up. Jane had to find a place to stuff them while she was figuring things out. It seemed that Gary wasn't picky about what kind of shoe he stole. One day it would be sneakers, the next one would be high heels. Jane felt her heart start to race as she stared at her meowing cat from the other side of the shutter. She reluctantly opened it and watched the feline bound into the entryway. But he didn't come empty-pawed. He had brought her an all-too-familiar artifact, something she didn't want any more of. She felt like it was too incriminating having half the neighborhood's shoes in her home. Her cat had started a peculiar habit, and she didn't understand what came over him. She picked up the shoe and hurriedly took it where no one else would find it. She opened up her cupboard, where she shamefully kept all the others. She stowed it with the rest and stared at the bizarre collection of mismatched shoes in front of her. What did it all mean? Jane sighed as she stared at the collection. She just wished she understood what her cat was doing. His behavior had changed so abruptly that she hadn't even had time to take him to a vet yet. But her thoughts were cut short as another meow made her jump. He surprised her yet again, from behind, before waltzing into the cupboard. Why was he so obsessed with the shoes? Enough was enough. Jane fatefully decided to pick up her phone and try to do something about the predicament her cat had left her in. Where had he been getting all of these shoes from? But the woman had no idea what she was doing. She was unaware of what kind of consequences the truth held, and now that she was about to admit what he had done, there was no helping her. Jane called her local vet, hoping to find some answers. She didn't think it even warranted going in person, but once she patched through to one of the qualified veterinarians, she explained everything. She assumed he would laugh, but it seemed that she only had the opposite effect. He told her to bring him in immediately. Something wasn't right, and it explained his abnormal behavior. Jane looked down at the newest shoe she had been offered as tribute. This time, something was different. She saw something sticking out of one of the high heels. Curiosity got the better of her, and she reached in and pulled out a slip of paper. But upon reading what it said, dread flooded her body. She knew she'd have no choice but to call 911. Jane rushed to check the other shoes. She hoped her hunch wouldn't ring true, but it seemed all too obvious now. How had her cat done something like this? She knew she'd soon have the cops knocking on her door. She never thought her life would change so drastically after her cat changed his behavior so unexpectedly. Things would never be the same. Jane had to call the police immediately. She just had no idea how they would react to what she had to say. They arrived on her doorstep a few minutes later, where she explained everything. She just hoped she wouldn't be in trouble. The police reviewed the footage and felt that it was evidence enough. They stared at Jane and Gary and did something she didn't expect. They started laughing. They told her she had adopted a cat burglar. They collected the shoes and put them in their patrol car. They assured her that they'd get all of the shoes back to their owners in due time. Jane still had no idea why her cat loved to steal shoes. Her vet told her that it might have been the sweat from people that he liked. Cats are obsessed with scents, and human body odor is among one of their favorites. But over the next few weeks, Gary's behavior changed again. It was as if he understood that he could get his owner in trouble.